Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan, and today we're coming at you with This Week in Cannabis News from September 4th to the 10th. Now, before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learned something, please just leave a like on it as it really helps out my channel. And of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos. Then there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. Try to think of it as a time capsule. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so that you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the U.S. industry, identify top U.S. MSOs that you keep seeing pop up that you think will be worth more in the future than they are now, and take advantage whenever you feel ready if you wish to do so, of course, pending whatever incremental legislation we're expecting from now until the end of the year, or even until the 2024 election. And so with that, we start off with this update from Pot Mom. So thank you, Pot Mom, as Maryland reports 92 million in sales in August, up from 87 million in July. So we love to see their second month going strong. Breakdown of sales, 55 million for flower. Again, flower remains king in most states. 24.6 million to concentrate, 6.1 million to infused edibles, 5.1 million to infused non-edibles, 9.5 million for plants, and then 512,000 for shake and trim. So we love to see it. A few comments down here if you wanted to look. Good one by Eric Rattle that there's a lot of potential for growth, especially for more of these products once some regulations are loosened on them and they gain more popularity. But with that from Jesse Redmond, Maryland launched adult use on sales on July 1st, and sales have increased 115% from June when it was medical only, while adult use sales are already up 5% month over month. So we can't ask for much more than that. This is going to be a very strong state for these MSOs that all have the state maximum of 4 adult use dispensaries. And so just another way of looking at how sales were when it was medical only, and then we launched for adult use, and then this is last month. And then again, just to highlight MSO stores in Maryland, of course, the ones with 4 will benefit the most. But Trulieve also has 3 stores there. Columbia Care has 3. Ianthus has 3. Goodness Growth has 2. And Maramed has 1. And so with that, from Illinois, we've got sales for August updated as of September 5th. And good to see that August did set the record for total number of items sold for 3.6 million, 3,646,736 in total. If we look at in-state resident sales, they increased by about 700,000, which means more people in Illinois are choosing to purchase legal cannabis as opposed to from the black market, which is promising. Well, out-of-state resident sales did decrease a little bit, most likely because as opposed to coming into Illinois and paying higher taxes than you might get in Missouri, anyone out of state is probably going to Missouri or any other option that's around them where they can get cheaper cannabis. And so that's to be expected in a way. But with that, total sales down a little bit from July, just by 1 million, but 139.2 million in August, up from last year's August, which was 129.4. So we've got about 10 million extra in sales. With about 6 million more products, because last year's August was just 3 million, 3.6. And so obviously this is probably helped by more dispensaries being opened and, helping legally supply the demand. But just wanted to share that as a great update out of Illinois. And with that from MJ Biz Daily, Massachusetts adult use cannabis sales hit $5 billion milestone. Happy to report, Massachusetts cannabis regulators said sales have not slowed as more northeastern states have implemented adult use programs, according to the Worcester Business Journal. Good to know, and I imagine sales will continue to increase as they add more legal outlets to try and, offset the gray or black market. Well, it's worth noting that in January, the state hit the $4 billion milestone since adult use began in November 2018. According to Business Journal, regulators noted that the state's rec retailers took in $1 billion between January and August of this year. Huge, the fastest that licensed sellers have generated that much in sales. And so again, when you supply legal cannabis, people want to vote for it with their dollars as Massachusetts continues to hit record sales even as other states come online. And so we love to see that. Well, there's a bit more down here if you wanted to pause to read, but that's essentially the whole story. Again, all the links will be in the comments. And so on to the big news we got out of Congress, at least this week. Just going to give you the updates because while it's a lot of talk, don't want to, try and spend too much time on this, but from Marijuana Moment, Schumer says Senate will be making progress on cannabis banking in floor speech on legislative priorities. If we can progress on these items, we will greatly improve the lives of average Americans. True, and obviously would have done so if you just did your job 2 years ago and passed safe when the votes were there, but regardless, at least it sounds promising that he will keep his word and make this a priority in September, as he said, since it didn't happen in August. But with that, connoisseurs.io, this is another one from Marijuana Moment that came out after the story, I believe. Yeah, this was the 5th. And then the 6th, we got a wave of news as this one, Senate Banking Committee Chair aims to advance cannabis banking bill within the next 6 weeks. And so this isn't Shmuck, but this is Sherrod Brown. Of course, coming from him, that's also very promising as well. Maybe this was what Schumer said, but either way, this is Brown, obviously coming out with the same tone and sentiment that Shmuck had. And then from Todd Harrison, thanks for sharing this from PunchBowl. Brown lays out a full to-do list for the next 6 weeks. And so pause to read if you're interested, but it's essentially the details that we got on September 6th. On top of Shmuck saying that they're going to take this up, it's actually Brown saying, yeah, we're going to hold a vote on this sooner than later, which is, again, very promising. Weren't expecting that. And then PoliticoPro reporting on the same thing as of the 6th. And this is in the evening. Cannabis banking deal imminent, Sherrod Brown says, from 8 p.m. versus this one that had come out, I think, earlier in the day. 6:15 a.m. on the 6th. And so this one comes from the evening. Of course, you can pause to read if you're interested, but sort of reiterating, we think there's an agreement imminent that there will be a general agreement on. We know that some members of the committee are going to vote no regardless, but we think there will be some good that gets a good majority. So much fucking word salad there, but I digress because the main thing is that the sentiment is positive. As from Green Market Report, Safe Banking Act's odds may have just increased. It's essentially just telling us the same thing that we're getting out of all these past stories. But I just want to share with you as many different perspectives. Obviously, this one's doing the same thing, PunchBowl. I don't know if it references Politico as well, CNN, but all that to say there's more info here on that news if you wanted to pause to read. Otherwise, the full link is in the description. But again, more on this from DNBC. Apparently, TD Cowen says Senate vote on safe banking by September 20th. Now, this is obviously much sooner than 6 weeks, so be very skeptical of this. Take it with a grain of salt, but figured I would share it as the House is a bigger issue this time, which is true. It'd still be a big deal to finally get something out of the Senate and make attaching it to a larger bill more likely than previous attempts. But as mentioned, this is from TD Cowen. Cannabis policy, Senate banking to vote on SAFE Act enactment still tough. Now, I don't know where they get this date. We expect Senate banking will vote as soon as September 20th, but it's very interesting. So again, take it with a grain of salt, but this is from a investment firm that traditionally they are wrong in the past. So a bit more comments here if you wanted to pause to read on that or just get some other opposing views. Well, this one from Todd Harrison, Freddie Benson Gomez at ATB, which is another investment firm. So again, take this with a grain of salt, but a few points worth making, and this is as of 9 a.m. on September 5th. So it's a bit older too. But following the MSO rally last week, there's one question in the mind of investors. Can this run continue? So a few points, 1, 2, and 3. More importantly, I think fundamentally the sector is still undervalued, and several catalysts could happen between today and first half of 2024 that could help keep sentiment positive. As SAFE could hit the Senate committee floor in September and October, based on everything we're hearing. That actually would have come out after this one because this is from September 5th and all that news was September 6th. Ohio has the adult use ballot in November, and something could happen in PA and Florida. Or at least we can get confirmation. And the DEA is expected to issue its recommendation over the next 9 months. We heard 90 days, 9 months, not sure where that is from, but the DEA has to open its recommendation for a public comment period ahead of a final decision, such that an initial recommendation is likely to occur ahead of Q2 2024. So it almost sounds like that 90-day timeline might not be set in stone. So again, take that with a grain of salt. I'm trying to give you the most up-to-date info that I have. One thing I did want to add here, though, is that from my understanding, Kim Rivers did mention that if we don't get an answer next April, which would be Q1 or Q2 of next year, about Florida from the Supreme Court, then the adult use measure does make it on the ballot in 2024 for November. So that's another thing I wanted to mention. But so take from that what you will if you'd like. And then wanted to recap this one. While we heard Boris say this in our last video, he was quoted from that Twitter Spaces. Just wanted to share this, reiterating that Curaleaf's Boris Jordan says he's hearing through his network that the DEA will agree with the HHS's recommendation that cannabis should go to Schedule 3. And so while we know the DEA has done a lot of fuckery in the past, agencies typically want to work in sync. When one makes a decision to encourage the other one to do something, chances are it's because it's going to get done. And so this is, I think, quite promising. Just to hear it reiterated. Now, it's been rewritten in a Benzinga article, so that link will be in the description if you want to go through that. But of course, if you watched my last week's video, you've already probably heard this or are caught up. And so you can check that out if you like. While there are more comments down here just from anyone, if anyone's interested in checking those out. Well, I just wanted to share this one because, again, didn't know I would be such a big Matt Gaetz fan, but big ups to Matt Gaetz as he promotes cannabis reform as guest host on Newsmax. And so, again, thank you, Matt, for having the balls to speak the truth in this current climate, as he filled in for Greg Kelly on Newsmax, the show, and basically started to promote cannabis reform after Joe Biden's Department of Health proposed moving the drug from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. And he says some pretty bold things which need to be said. Perhaps the worst decision made by the U.S. government in 1970, and a very costly one. The war on drugs has been so costly, so useless, got to end that war on people now, was to begin the war on drugs through the Controlled Substances Act, declared Gaetz on the show 100%. We should honestly just get rid of the Controlled Substances Act, probably rewrite something better, but, obviously they're not going to go about doing that work. But all that to say is, Also, to add on the quote here, to believe that cannabis is somehow more dangerous than fentanyl would require a hallucination more disorienting than a weekend with Charlie Sheen in a peyote den. So love the humor, and again, love the balls on Matt Gaetz to tell the truth in this sort of environment, and be the cannabis MVP that we need, at least in the House for now. As someone we can actually respect because he has the courage to say what we're all thinking. While on the flip side, you get this nonsense, which is essentially a stock response from Biden's shady press secretary, Karine St-Jean-Pierre, whatever the fuck her name is. We know this isn't true, but for whatever reason, Marijuana Moment is like, well, let's write about it because it's going to get us some clicks and some readers. So take from this what you will. We know, obviously, that the lack of action over the last 2.5 years is likely because of a lot of lobbying money and because of political science, nothing to do with medical and scientific evidence. And I mean, if anything, coming from the architect of the 1994 crime bill, this is, just, again, so far from the truth, but very on brand with his, presidential campaign and how they want to promotion to the American people and their voter base. But again, reminding you that he is the architect of the 1994 crime bill. That is why, unfortunately, cannabis companies are still treated like coke dealers, unfortunately, in terms of not even being able to open bank accounts, losing out on mortgages, loans, etc. And so we know that this is still an issue, and this is one of the main reasons why SAFE ought to have been passed. But again, if anyone in the Biden admin or regulators, politicians on the local level really gave that much of a fuck about the cannabis industry, and many have come a long way to caring, but of course the majority still don't, we wouldn't be discriminating against this industry so blatantly like the war on people continues to do. And so it should be a priority to, of course, end all this. And so just figured I would share this for anyone interested in learning more about some personal stories that people are going through, the discrimination they're facing. And so, of course, you can pause to read here. There's more on the story, of course. It's a longer one. Full link in the description. While living or laundering, can you imagine that? And it's not like it's the average American's fault. They're not laundering shit because they're abiding by local state laws that have changed and have now opened up this industry. It's actually, of course, the lack of action from the federal government that for whatever reason still wants to paint anyone in this industry as criminals. That's obviously the biggest fucking problem. And so it's a longer story. I'm not going to go through the whole thing as this video will be too long, but you can pause to read. Otherwise, the full link is in the description if you're interested. But with that, one more before we get into some studies, as this was from Castanet, a small blog out of Western Canada, British Columbia, where Kelowna is, which essentially highlights that after ending cannabis prohibition 5 years ago, the only big difference in Canada is the drop in alcohol sales compared to cannabis sales. And if anything, that's obviously great news because we know alcohol is responsible for about 40% of crime worldwide. So no doubt if sales are dropping, that means there's likely less crime and less impaired driving in Canada, while at the same time, cannabis sales are surging. And we know that cannabis is much healthier for you as a substance than alcohol. Now, again, everyone is different. However, if many individuals are choosing to drop alcohol for cannabis, it's likely going to help them in the long run. And I know most people don't view this as the case, but it is. And so lots here if you wanted to pause to read. One thing I just find hilarious is one potential factor contributing to the decline in alcohol sales is the weather. Yeah, right, man. I mean, we've had a couple cold weeks in Canada, but it's been hot and people want to drink in the summer. Patios have been packed. But the main thing, furthermore, there seems to be a shifting social dynamic regarding alcohol consumption. But the other thing, cannabis, on the other hand, continues to its ascent in popularity. And I mean, I think the biggest driver is just the fact that cannabis is accessible and people are just choosing that as opposed to alcohol because there's no hangovers. That was sort of one of my initial polls at the beginning. But anyways, more here if you wanted to pause to read if you're interested. Just thought I'd share that as it's interesting because, of course, Canada, 5 years in, we have the data now proving more and more why ending cannabis prohibition is a no-brainer. But with that, some studies from NDPI. We got this study that was published August 26, 2023 called CBD Inhibits In Vivo Development of Human Breast Cancer Tumors. Now, while the study says it's in vivo, which means it's in a living being, I believe the study was done in mice and not in humans, which is obviously unfortunate because obviously if cannabis had been descheduled a long time ago, we would be having larger scale samples doing sort of studies like this already in humans. And why it's still done in mice is obviously beyond us. It's not very fucking helpful for us. But main thing to highlight, obviously the very beneficial results. In the therapeutic scheme, 60 cells inoculated mice developed tumors that reached a mean volume of this size at 45 days, while 50% of CBD-treated mice showed gradual resorption of tumors. 50%, that's very promising, a lot more than zero, and the tumors formed remained small and were eliminated under continuous CBD treatment in 66% of the animals. Again, sounds very promising. So all that to say is these results confirm that in vivo, CBD blocks development of breast cancer tumors formed by cells induced by malignancy by IL-1 symbol, endorsing its therapeutic potential for cancer treatment. And again, I want this to be descheduled ASAP so we can start running this in humans and start saving fucking human lives. Would you not agree, folks? Let me know what you think in the comments, and as well, this full study will be in the comments if you want to check it out. I wanted to share this one from High Times. Researchers identify mechanism behind CBD's anti-inflammatory effects. We knew CBD fought inflammation, and now we know why. Now, I kind of thought we did know, but anyways, in a recent study, researchers have gained critical insight into the mechanism behind cannabinoids, with particular focus on the non-psychoactive cannabinoid CBD and how it works to reduce inflammation. Very similar to what we saw in the last study. Inflammation is responsible for everything from skin breakouts, hence CBD presence in beauty products, to medical conditions such as asthma, autoimmune disease, and even cardiovascular problems. Hence why Big Pharma is so fucking terrified of cannabis being outright descheduled, why they pay so much to Congress and lobby to keep cannabis stuck in the CSA for as long as possible so they can keep their chokehold on the medical establishment. So there's more on the plant here and the endocannabinoid system in every human body, or every mammal, I believe, if you're interested in learning. But the main findings here is that we found that all 8 cannabinoids we studied had anti-inflammatory effects, said Lucas Peltner, the study's lead author. Very promising. And they found, get this, all the compounds we studied were found to inhibit or stop the formation of pro-inflammatory messenger substances in cells. Essentially, the compounds did their best to stop inflammation, while at the same time enhancing the formation of inflammation-resolving substances. So at the same time, encouraging inflammation fighting substances. Like, what the hell? How fucking cool, right? So let me know what you think in the comments about this. Obviously, massive findings. Again, a reason we ought to have descheduled a long time ago. But full link in the comments. Well, we've got this one from New York Post on an Australian study as of September 7th. Medical cannabis restores quality of life for chronically ill. Another study proving the prohibitionists have been sad, pathetic humans all along. As a new study out of Australia suggests medical cannabis can improve the quality of life for those who suffer chronic health issues. The research published Wednesday in the journal PLOS1 found that medical cannabis not only improved quality of life in the first 3 months of use, but also helped ease anxiety, depression, and pain levels over time, possibly because of all the inflammation it helped reduce. Within the first 3 months of medicinal cannabis therapy, participants reported improvements in their health-related quality of life, fatigue, health conditions associated with anxiety, depression, and pain, according to Senior Research Officer Margaret Ann Tate in a statement to SWNS. And so you love to see it. More data to shut the prohibitionists up outright, and the full link of this study and story will be in the comments if you want to go through it. With that last one on cannabis and health, quickly from the Chicago Sun-Times, seems like the natural progression of things, but love to share it as more older adults are trying pot, some for the first time, and I'm sure many of them are thinking, fuck, why didn't I try this years ago? That propaganda really fooled me and got me fucked up and paranoid. And so millions of older adults have started using pot, but as always, questions remain about its health effects on seniors. And why is that? Probably because it's stuck in the Schedule 1, because of the shitty government trying to keep control, and that's why we don't know how this plant can most benefit seniors and human beings, sadly. So hopefully we get to that day sooner than later, but more on this story if you just wanted to go through it, some examples of how real people are benefiting from starting to use it, especially in their older age. But with that, on to MSOs from Cannavestments. Was on vacation for the last few Q2 earnings, so finally got around to updating my first half 2023 tax-adjusted OCF and adjusted earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, or EBITDA, conversion chart. And while he adds see previous posting for description and commentary, I'm really just going to focus on these 2 images. And so quickly, I will bring you down here if you might be interested in grabbing the link in the comments and see what else he touches on. But just figured, I think, best use of my time in this video is to just focus on what's updated and let you try and find the rest. And so 2023 year-to-date tax-adjusted operational cash flow number in the millions, looking at Q1 and then Q2, but combined, these asterisk highlights anyone that hasn't reported Q2, just a few of them. But main thing is Green Thumb is the leader, $85 million in cash flow this year after Q2 quarters. Verano, $66.6 million. Trulieve, $26.6 million, Cresco $23.7 million, and Ascend Wellness at $18.9 million. And then EBITDA is a bit more of an arbitrary number. I'm just going to leave this here. I don't think it's nearly as important as operational cash flow, but for what it's worth, anyone that's interested. And so with that, Green Thumb as of Tuesday, as they announced share repurchase program. And I know there are a lot of mixed reviews about this. Some people like it, but I know many would rather see them use $50 million to pay down debt if possible. But all that to say is that on Tuesday, they announced, or the board of directors authorized the repurchase pursuant to a normal course issuer bid of up to 10.4 million of its subordinate voting shares, up to 5% of the class, from time to time over a period of 12 months. So the board of directors authorized the company to spend up to $50 million for the program. And so whether they end up doing that fully over the next 12 months, I'm not sure if they have to. I'm sure things can change and maybe they'll use the money in different ways. Mind you, there's more down here if you wanted to pause to read. But because of this announcement on Tuesday, strategically, I was thinking it's a lot smarter for me to actually average down on my Air Wellness and get a much lower cost for potential future growth than to just initially start a position in Greentham on Tuesday. And so that was my reasoning, and I wanted to share with you because on Friday last week, I believe Air Wellness closed at about $1.91 a share. And so I knew I had to wait until Tuesday morning to get in, and I was really hoping I can get in under $2. Obviously, that'd be wishful thinking. But so here's what happened. Tuesday morning, my money arrived in, and so I set a bid before the market opened for $1.91, hoping I could catch a dip. Obviously, Air opened at like $2.30, and so there was no way I could get in under $2. And so as Air started going up to $2.40, $2.50, I was putting in little stink bids to try and catch a dip at $2.20 and $2.10, and that wasn't happening. And so I just had the realization, like, look, Jordan, Air is still so undervalued. You're just being cheap by not trying to get shares even at $2.45, because what happens if come Friday it ends the week at $3.50 and you've missed the boat completely because you've wanted to get in at cheaper shares? And fortunately, Air ended the week at $3.81 Canadian, and I got my new average price down to $3.40. And so I'm actually up on Air now. Very happy about that. And so I'm going to show you a brief glimpse of the portfolio. I will admit it's very ugly for most of my positions. The ones that I'm faring best in are Air Wellness and Tilray, of course, because I have the lowest average cost. I've learned a lot from Goodness Growth, Trulieve, especially Cresco. I accumulated a ton of shares at a high price, and I'm not worried. I know I'm going to get my money back. And I'm gradually getting that money back, over the last few weeks. But hey, you live and learn, and I just want to share with you because I do believe in being transparent. And so my new Air position, I'm loving that one. Again, Cresco down. I put 50 grand into that at $15 a share. And hey, I know I will get it back. It's a painful lesson, but I think it's very good for me to learn this now when I'm young as opposed to when I'm older. Goodness Growth, I could have sold that when they had announced the deal with Racino. And gotten my money back and not been down. But again, I still think I'll make that money back in the future. All that to say is, hey folks, if I did it perfectly and I sold all my shares at the top for cash and had about 130 cash in February of 2021 at highs, in hindsight, what I would have chosen to do is put as much cash, maybe up to 100K, into a real estate investment trust like RioCan, because they pay a monthly dividend. And, from Feb 2021 to now, in a perfect world, hindsight 2020, had I done that, I would be getting dividends every single month from RioCan that I'd be reinvesting. And I don't know if it'd be covering my expenses by now, but all I can say is that, if I knew then what I knew now, that's what I would have done. No way of knowing that, but just wanted to share with you. And again, in the name of transparency, fuck it. Might as well just show you guys that you can buy at the wrong time, but still feel fairly good about being down 60 grand. And I'm sharing this just to show all of you that don't take my advice as someone that knows what I'm talking about as an investor. I'm learning on the go, and I'm just trying to share what I learn and paint as clear of a picture so that you guys can benefit. Because, look, I can't give advice, but clearly you can see based on the last few weeks, the best time to buy is when there's blood on the streets, everyone's terrified, and that was like 3 weeks ago. So if anyone's paying attention, I hope you might have got in then. Again, this is not advice, just trying to share so that you can take advantage, because this is going to happen whether we like it or not. And you might as well learn to take advantage so you can help yourself, your family, your community, and, make some money, because wealth is going to be created, right? And so with that, on to this one from Jungle Java. Thank you for sharing this news, as I can feel a little bit better about my massive Cresco bag as they launched the first ever cannabis advertisement on Spotify, the world's most popular audio streaming subscription service. And so the ad campaign, which aims to communicate the benefits of shopping at Sunnyside Dispensary, include 30-second audio and in-app digital banners that drive to the retailer's proprietary e-commerce platform. I didn't even know they had that. Fascinating. Advertising is supported by a volume-driving paid media campaign that includes programmatic buying, native ads, Connect TV, and more. And so more on this link in the comments if you're interested, but definitely a precedent and a new avenue worth trying. So love to see that, Cresco. This one from young Justin, who I believe likes to watch the cannabis industry from the sideline as a young accounting student, because it does definitely highlight that while there are some companies, like in every industry, I think this is fair to say, that do things by the book and that you want to invest in early and benefit from because they'll be the winners in the long run, there's also a lot of companies where there's some shady shit going on in the accounting. And I think that's something that he's highlighted about this industry. Happens to them all, I'm sure, but largest by volume short position on the CSE. We could always check shortdata.ca, but it appears that only a few cannabis companies are left on there. Trulieve bonds are quite interesting. I don't know why bonds might be as opposed to the equity, but if you happen to know, let me know in the comments. Well, Cresco Labs is there, Curaleaf as well, and the other one not mentioned is Forefront Ventures Corp. So very interesting. Wonder why these are so large, and obviously very risky for the short sellers trying to play this position. And this is as of August 31st. And so, of course, you can pause to read. Otherwise, grab the full link if you wanted to read more. Well, we got this one from the Dales Report, another interview, this one with Trulieve's CEO Kim Rivers. It was great to have Kim Rivers on the show to talk about everything. And so just if you're interested, especially if you happen to be invested in Trulieve like I am, I will tune into this probably later today. I haven't had the chance to tune in. So, of course, you can grab the full link in the description if you wanted to tune into that, especially if you are a Trulieve shareholder. Well, we got this one from Tilray Brands, and I know some of my viewers, based on recent comments, do own Tilray, and they don't want me to forget about this one because I still own it too. So, hey, I hear you guys. My apologies for, not covering them in the past. But main thing to remember is that when the U.S. cannabis companies have their day, Canadian LPs are going to have their day too, as a rising tide lifts all ships. And if we look at the Canadian LPs in Canada, they're not nearly as fundamentally healthy as a lot of the US MSOs, but out of all of them, Tilray is one of the more healthy ones compared to, say, Canopy and Aurora, right? And so if you're going to own any, again, it's not advice, but that's why I own Tilray. And obviously I made money in the past when, Aphria became Tilray, but all that to say is that they expand market-leading cannabis portfolio with launch of new Redecan products across Canada. And I always almost forget that Hexo bought Redecan, and then Tilray, of course, bought Hexo for so cheap. Unbelievable almost to look back and see how everything happened. But so, of course, now Tilray owns Redecan, and that is how Tilray is slowly but surely taking over market share in Canada. And so they're introducing a limited edition series of exclusive whole flower cannabis genetics, including King Sherb and Animal Runts, 2 high-quality indica strains on top of their award-winning strains that are currently available in Canada. And so more here if you wanted to pause to read. Otherwise, full link in the description about Tilray if you're interested. And so on to some state news again from Marijuana Moment. 3 in 5 Floridians support cannabis legalization. And so what the fuck is the Supreme Court doing, even entertaining the Attorney General's preposterous requests? New poll finds as State Supreme Court weighs 2024 reform ballot initiative, right? If Floridians want this, why is the AG trying to get in the way of democracy, and why is the Supreme Court even attending to the possibility? Floridians are generally supportive of the legalization of both medical and rec cannabis, right? Because Floridians are not getting lobbying donations from big pharma, big whatever, it's sad. It's only the politicians and the regulators, anyone that might have an incentive to slow the progress of what's inevitably going to come. And so with that, though, from the Office of Medical Cannabis Use, looking at this past week, new dispensary locations that were approved from September 4th to the 8th. We got a new Sunnyside in Jacksonville. Love to see that as a Cresco shareholder. And then a new Jungle Boys in Bonita Springs. And if we look at qualified patient count, they've increased the qualified patient count to 844,148, which represents a week-over-week increase of 1,636. So love to see that number jump up a little bit, up from less than 1,000 that we saw last week. And so with that, though, looking at dispensations for September 1 to the 7th of this past week, we can see all the MSOs active in the state. We can see the number of active dispensaries they have in operation. And we can see for this past week the number of milligrams of THC sold, milligrams of CBD sold, and ounces of smokable flower. And so this is a great data set to keep track of week over week. But fortunately, we have Connoisseurs.io making it easy for us to take in that information and digest it, as his market share comp sheet shows who is leading market share in flower: Trulieve, then Curaleaf, then Move, then Air, then Surterra. This past week, THC was Trulieve, Air Wellness, Curaleaf, Surterra, then Move, while CBD was Surterra Wellness, Trulieve, Move, Curaleaf, and Sunnyside working its way up. And there's a little bit more info down here that we see in the OMMU, but main thing is the visuals. So thank you, Connoisseur.io. Total flower sales in ounces by company this past week. Total THC sales in milligrams by company this past week. Total CBD sales, in milligrams by company this past week. And total dispensing locations by company. Trulieve's got a hell of a lead, and then Verano is second. And with that, from New Jersey Cannabis Regulatory Commission, it's like they've heard me complaining in my videos, saying that they can end their own bottleneck by opening more legal outlets so that more New Jerseyans can vote for legal cannabis with their dollars. It's just going to drive more and more sales, more and more growth. But the good news, new dispensaries now open in Flemington, Maplewood, New Brunswick, North Brunswick, Scotch Plains, and Somerset. 6 new dispensaries in New Jersey. Love to see that. This link will be in the comments. Well, we got this one from my favorite New Jersey source, Christopher Norman. So thank you for this timely one, Chris, as New Jersey proposed rules for new forms of edibles and cannabis drinks released today. And so this is obviously great on top of adding more dispensaries to, drive more sales, adding more possible products. Even better, on top of all the opportunity that you get when you end cannabis prohibition. So the good news, though, rule to be considered at August 15th meeting, then could be formally could formally take effect December 15th, before the end of this year. Holiday time special cookies for Santa. That would be amazing. So again, take this with a grain of salt. We'd like to see this possibly implemented by the end of the year, but thank you, Chris, for updating us on this. Our favorite source out in New York with an update of how things are going in New York cannabis as of September 6th, 2023. So I'm not going to spend too much time, but I will read the first few, as at this point, there should have been at least 180 CAURD or social equity stores open across New York State. As of today, there are only 23. 5 are serving as delivery only, so they're actually only 18. And 1 has been closed for renovation since February, so only 17, for fuck's sakes. As of its last meeting in July, the Cannabis Control Board has awarded 463 licenses, 280 AUCC licenses, 40 AUCP licenses, 15 lab permits, 11 sampling firms approval. So you can hand out licenses even when people can't even open stores. It makes no sense. So this is just why New York is so bad. Obviously, if you've been watching all along, you know how bad it is. Now I'm going to stop reading every bit of this and just encourage you to pause to read if you're interested. Of course, you can grab the link and go through every story if you're not caught up. But New York is the biggest shit show and the biggest example of what happens when you elect officials, whether it's regulators or politicians, that are just communist or Marxist. They want nothing to do with American values or ideals. They want to try and control the industry from the top down. And of course, they want to promote social equity, which is not equal access to opportunity for everyone that wants to try. No, it's equal outcomes, meaning everyone becomes equally poor because we're going to be so bad at managing this, we're going to discriminate against everybody, and we're only going to give a small group of people a shot, hence the 17 that have opened up a shot versus the however many thousands of illicit stores are ongoing. And so I'll shut up and just let you pause to read here if you're interested. More here, pause to read. No details about DASNY's $5 million loan program. Nothing. More pause to read. The state's crackdown on unlicensed by any measure. Now get this. A recent New York City Council meeting now estimates the number of unlicensed stores is up to 8,000, up from the 1,500. You got to get rid of Hochul. She's a fucking idiot. All these people. Get Mayor Adams out. Get that Damien Fagan out. They're idiots. Pause to read. Pause to read. And whether they're doing this on purpose or not, I don't think they are. I just think they're really that dumb. But again, it's because they're idealists, and they have no experience of being a practical realist and how things actually work in the real world. Because that's what happens when you stay in politics and you become a Marxist and communist. So all that is there. Longest one we've ever had. Full link is in the comments if you want to go through that. But the good news is that MSOs are starting to fight back. Boris Jordan, from this New York Post article, medical cannabis companies slam Hochul over New York's legal weed rollout. So thank you, Boris, for finally standing up. It's high time for change in New York. Our collective letter urges Kathy Hochul to grant established medical operators AU licensing to finally counter the illicit market and help bolster sales and tax revenues for the state. Obviously, they've fallen so far. It's only up from here, really. And so I'm not going to touch on this article because, again, just don't want the video to be too long. It is in the comments if you wanted to go through it yourself. But with that, apparently New York Senate Cannabis Committee schedules hearing to address challenges for the legalization rollout. And so while this sounds promising, this is as of 2 days ago, September 7th. Apparently, it's announced that the hearing is going to be October 30th. So the end of next month. He said that the purpose of the meeting is to finally address the many challenges that we have seen with the rollout of adult use cannabis here in New York. Why wouldn't you have done that months or years ago? Because it's been years since you legalized. And so what are the chances we're going to get a fair and productive policy discussion? Probably nil, but this is an update as of now. So just wanted to share it, and this comes from Senator Jeremy Cooney. So at least thank you, Jeremy Cooney, for hopefully smacking the gavel down and finally holding Hochul and the rest of those clowns accountable. So full link in the comments if you want to go through that. But with that, with some more state news, for Marijuana Moment, California Senate approves bill to legalize cannabis cafes. Huge, with final concurrence vote expected shortly before going to the governor. Now the main thing that California needs, though, anyone in this cannabis industry to stay afloat and compete with the black market that doesn't have to pay taxes, is if California would just repeal taxes for a year or two. That would be the biggest win that anyone in California could hope for. Chances are it's not going to happen outright because Marxists don't want to give up tax that they're getting. But the main thing is that this is a step in the right direction for California, of course. Cannabis cafes. We've got bars all over the place for alcohol. Why not allow cannabis lounges? And so good news, the sponsor touted the strong bipartisan support the measure received on Thursday. Again, not going to go through this article until this bill passes, but more on it in the comments if you wanted to read through it yourself. With that, for Marijuana Moment, Maryland's first adult use cannabis license applications will open for social equity businesses in November, regulators announce. good luck, Maryland. Obviously, you guys are on fire, and so hopefully this doesn't get in the way of what you guys are already doing. And I imagine it's not going to be nearly as terrible as New York because it's just not run by such clowns. And so this application round will more than double the number of cannabis businesses in the state. Fuck yeah. You'll love to hear that. Full link in the comments if you want to go through that. Well, from next Pittsburgh, another one of the state like Ohio and Florida that continues to try, Pittsburgh cannabis advocates encouraged by Pennsylvania bill to legalize cannabis. And so while a bill was apparently introduced on July 6th, it's still being reviewed by the Senate Law and Justice Committee pending further deliberation. But for whatever reason, advocates seem hopeful that this is the best chance they have at finally, passing or getting adult use done in Pennsylvania. So while we have no definitive answers yet, just wanted to share this for anyone interested, maybe if you're in PA. But full link is in the comments. Of course, though, I will update you whether or not PA can get this bill passed and whether this will become a reality sooner than not. But then with that, advocates mark the 35th anniversary of DEA's own judge calling for cannabis rescheduling as agency conducts new review. And I mean, if you're not aware of this, yeah, this happened in 1998, even 5 years before I was born, or 4 years before I was born because I was 92. How the fuck is cannabis still in the Schedule 1? Right? It's mind-blowing. And this is 35 years after, who is the legend? Yeah, DEA Administration Law Judge Francis Young made history on September 6, 1988, when he issued the ruling titled In the Matter of Cannabis Rescheduling. The case was the culmination of years of activist-led efforts to get DEA to carry out a cannabis review, which the agency resisted, even after being compelled by a federal appeals court. Hence why we're still a little bit skeptical that the DEA is not going to fuck around based on the HHS recommendation. However, we've never had the HHS recommendation. That's a big deal and a big precedent, as opposed to just a federal appeals court, right? So bigger deal that it's the HHS this time around, why we might think we'll actually get the rescheduling. But DEA finally held public hearings on the issue in 1986, 14 years after NORML and other advocates filed their scheduling petition, and after 2 years, Young released a ruling that sharply criticized DEA for keeping cannabis in Schedule 1. Think about this. This is from the 80s, folks. It's 2023 now, and it's still in Schedule 1. How the fuck? Just goes to show how long industries have had a stranglehold and been lobbying to keep cannabis illegal for 35 years, 50 years. Marijuana in its natural form is one of the safest therapeutically active substances known to man. Fuck yeah, it's true. By any measure of rational analysis, cannabis can be safely used within a supervised routine of medical care, it said. It would be unreasonable, arbitrary, and capricious, outright devious for the DEA to continue to stand between those sufferers and the benefits of this substance in light of the evidence in this record. And so more here, of course, you can grab the full link in the description, but his initial recommendation was, I think, moving it to Schedule 2. Obviously, should be descheduled outright. Now we're going to see it hopefully finally moved into Schedule 3, but just crazy. If you guys didn't know about this, a DEA judge making this ruling in the 80s, and still nothing has changed. Just goes to show how far we've come and why we cannot give up. And so a few cannabis spaces to share with you before we go. And again, I will admit I have not listened to them just because I haven't had the time. While I enjoy my new job, it does preoccupy me and takes away from being able to listen to some of this stuff, which sucks. But hopefully the quality of my overall videos haven't gone down. Let me know in the comments, guys, what you think. But with that, from MJ Stock Trader, a cannabis stock talk as of September 8th. And so it is 54 minutes. Link will be in the description if you wanted to go through this. But this is the standard Friday afternoon recap of what happened in the past week. So you'll hear a lot about what I covered if you tune into this. While this is another one from the chart guys, again, I haven't been able to tune in, but I have a lot of respect for Dan and the chart guys as someone that, would focus on fundamental investing and not technicals. He is very, very good based on his experience at highlighting when possible breakouts will happen and whether or not runs will continue or, whether they're pulling back or not. And so again, I haven't listened to this, don't know what he says on it, but a reminder for the upcoming space that was on the 7th. You can play the recording, and this is with the Dales Report, Chart Guys, and Jesse Redmond, who was featured earlier in the video. I'm sure you guys are aware of him if you've watched my videos for a while, but that link will be in the description as well. A few comments for those if you're interested. And then we got one more. Toby Cannabis will be hosting BoJo for a fireside chat on Tuesday, 4 p.m. This is actually next week. So set a reminder, folks, if you're interested for Tuesday, September 12th. I will try to tune into this. We'll cover Curaleaf's growth opportunities and progress on federal reform. So this link will be in the comments as well. Will be recorded, and this will be featured in my next week's video as a playback, no doubt. But yeah, very happy for these as more and more of these are popping up because we're just getting more and more momentum. You got to love it. And so out of Germany, thanks Todd for sharing this one, as a poll of Frankfurt, Germany residents. So Frankfurt only, not all of Germany, but found that in this one city, found 71% support legalizing cannabis. 71. pretty large majority. And one would imagine that if we went and asked people in Berlin or Munich, we'd probably get similar results. And so all that to say, unfortunately, I cannot read this article because it's behind a paywall, so I couldn't even translate it to get you more information. But could this be foreshadowing, as it's very promising that if the German people want some sort of legal cannabis, that the German government and the promises they've made with their phase 1 rollout of light legalization, so no commercial market, but home growers who can cultivate in groups and sell to people, essentially leads us to believe that the German government is going to keep on their promise and pass that bill that's going to allow that to happen. And ultimately, what Boris told us is that if that bill gets passed, based on this progress continuing, then we would see cannabis at least removed from Germany's list of narcotics January 2024. And that is a big thing we want. But again, we assume that that's only going to happen if the German government keeps their word. So Germany, please, if I have any German viewers, make sure you tell your friends and you start holding your local reps and your politicians accountable. Well, lastly, we've got this law review from SSRN that I found on Twitter, posted by one of the more bearish cannabis accounts. I forget the name, not even worth noting. But the main reason they posted this was to share that their belief is that Biden does not have the ability to end federal prohibition through executive action. Now, I don't think any of us believe that this is going to be the outcome. But I downloaded this paper and you can read through, I think it's pages 20, 21, 22, that essentially highlighted in very boring talk that the president doesn't have the ability to just end cannabis prohibition through the signing of his pen. And fair enough. I think that's what most of us already know. And that's why all these other efforts are being made to hopefully finally get it done through Congress after HHS tells the DEA and DEA says, yes, they'll do it. We'll finally see it done. So I just wanted to share this because it's interesting if you wanted to go through it all. I didn't read the whole thing. I just read the pages that someone referenced highlighting that, well, if anyone thinks Biden can just sign a pen and end prohibition, doesn't seem to be the case. Yeah, fair enough. Most of us already knew that. Hence why we're seeing what we're seeing. But just figured I'd share it. If anyone is interested in going through it, you can download it yourself and then read through it. 51 pages. It's hella boring, but it is there for you. But that is it for today's episode, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think of the stories? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'd be happy to address them. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video and you learned something, please just leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I will catch you next week for This Week in Cannabis News. Have a great weekend, everybody. Till next time.